At my birthday dinner, my girlfriend announced she was polyamorous now, and that I had to accept it or we were done. I smiled and said, I support your journey. Then I introduced her to my parents, both divorce attorneys specializing in infidelity. That I'm 35. I manage properties for a living, commercial real estate, mostly. Stable job, steady income, quiet life. I'm not flashy, but I've always valued stability. My girlfriend, Sophie, 31, was the opposite. Bright, unpredictable, always chasing self-discovery. When we met, that energy was magnetic. 3 years later, it was exhausting. We'd been living together for almost 2 years in one of the apartments I manage, with a discount on rent because, well, I technically was the landlord. Everything was fine, or at least functional, until last spring when she started reading a lot of relationship blogs and ethical non-monogamy podcasts. At first, I didn't think much of it. People grow, evolve, get curious. But I could feel her slipping into something performative, like she was waiting for her main character awakening. Then came my 35th birthday. We had a small gathering, friends, co-workers, my parents, both retired attorneys, and Sophie, who'd insisted on taking the lead in planning the evening. It was a nice dinner. Good food, laughter, light music, until dessert. She stood up, clinked her glass, and said with that faux confident voice I'd learned to recognize before every impulsive decision, Everyone, I have something exciting to share, especially with Ethan. I smiled politely, assuming it was one of her dramatic toasts. Then she said it. I've realized something huge about myself. I'm polyamorous. Pause. I want to live authentically, explore connections, and if Ethan loves me, he'll support that. If not, she shrugged, we might not be meant to last. The room went dead silent. My mom's fork stopped midair. My dad blinked once, leaned back, and muttered, well, this just got interesting. I didn't say a word for a few seconds. Just looked at Sophie. She was smiling. That kind of nervous smile people wear when they mistake chaos for courage. Finally, I nodded and said calmly, I support your journey. Her face lit up with relief. Really? Absolutely, I said, smiling. In fact, I'd like you to meet two people who will support it too. I gestured toward my parents. Mom, Dad, Sophie. Sophie, my parents. Both divorce attorneys. Specialize in infidelity and contractual disputes. She laughed awkwardly. My dad didn't. My mom just smiled like a woman watching a courtroom win right itself. The rest of the evening was painfully quiet. After guests left, Sophie followed me into the kitchen, whispering, what the hell was that? You said you wanted to live authentically, I said. I'm just letting you. You embarrassed me. You blindsided me, I said flatly. On my birthday. She crossed her arms. You're so rigid. This is why you don't understand real love. No, I said. I just understand real leases. Because here's the thing. That apartment she'd been living in under our name? The lease was in mine. She was listed as an authorized occupant, not a co-tenant. Meaning, she couldn't sublet, couldn't invite new residents without permission, and definitely couldn't start bringing partners into a property under management without breaching Clause 6, be unauthorized occupancy and subletting. She had no idea what that meant yet, but she would soon. The next morning, I met my parents for breakfast. My dad, ever the pragmatic attorney, had already drafted something on his iPad before the coffee even arrived. He grinned. Happy birthday, son. You want to make this educational or quiet? Quiet, I said. And clean. 2 days later, Sophie came home to find an envelope on the table. It was addressed formally. Notice of lease violation, unauthorized subletting/property misuse. She stormed into the room holding it like a grenade. What is this? You said you're exploring new connections, I said evenly. Apparently one of them has been staying here. That's unauthorized occupancy. He was just visiting. For 6 nights, I said, showing her the guest entry log. Clause 6b. You signed it. Her mouth opened, then closed. You're actually evicting me? I'm enforcing the contract you agreed to, I said, echoing her tone from so many old arguments. And that's how the fight started, but also how it ended. Because for the first time, I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I didn't play therapist to her self-discovery. I just treated her choices with the same seriousness she'd demanded, legally, not emotionally. By the end of the week, she'd packed half her stuff and moved in with her other connection. She left behind a few boxes and one note. You're cold. I hope your rules keep you warm. I taped the note to the fridge and wrote underneath it in Sharpie. Clause 6b. The thing about being calm when someone expects chaos is, it unnerves them more than yelling ever could. When Sophie realized I wasn't bluffing, she didn't know how to react. For years, she'd relied on my predictability, my patience, my willingness to de-escalate. This time, I wasn't playing defense. I was just done. She officially moved out 2 weeks later. It was mostly civil, until the part where she tried to negotiate. She showed up one evening, all charm and nostalgia, saying, "I've been thinking a lot. I think we handled everything wrong. Maybe we just need to redefine what this relationship looks like." I poured myself a drink and leaned on the counter. "Define it however you want, Sophie. You just won't be defining it here." Her smile faltered. "You really meant that eviction notice?" "Yes. You're seriously throwing me out of our home?" "It's my apartment, Sophie," I said evenly. "You were listed as an authorized occupant. That's not ownership. You're unbelievable. You're polyamorous," I said, shrugging. "I'm just helping you practice it. Separate spaces, separate responsibilities." She glared. "You're being spiteful." "No," I said. "I'm being literal. There's a difference." She packed the rest of her stuff and left that night. The next morning, I got an email, a long, emotional letter full of contradictions, apologies tangled with accusations. The part that stood out: "You're punishing me for being honest about who I am." I didn't reply, because honesty doesn't mean immunity, and accountability isn't punishment. 2 months passed. Then, one afternoon, I got a text. "Hey, can we talk?" I ignored it. A day later, "I just need help with something. Please." Still ignored it. Finally, she called. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was small. "Ethan, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm in a tough spot. Can I borrow $1,500 for a security deposit? My boyfriend and I broke up, and I can't move into the new place yet." There it was. Not love, not reflection, just logistics. I sighed. "Sophie, you have a job." "I had a job," she corrected. "I left it to start freelancing full-time. It's just been hard." "I see. Please, Ethan," she said softly. "You're the only person I can ask." I took a slow breath. "Do you remember Clause 6b? Are you serious right now?" "Completely," I said. Clause 6b was about unauthorized occupancy. You violated it, and it cost you the apartment. "I'm not rewriting the terms after the fact." "This isn't business," she snapped. "You made it business the moment you announced a new relationship in my home." Silence. Then she whispered, "You're really just going to let me struggle?" "No," I said. "I'm going to let you learn." A week later, her mother called me. We'd met a few times, and she was a decent woman, clearly tired of her daughter's patterns. "I'm sorry she dragged you into this again," she said. "She's staying with us for now. Says you weaponize contracts." I laughed quietly. That's one way to describe enforcing a lease. Honestly, her mom sighed. "I wish she'd meet someone who'd hold her accountable sooner." "I tried," I said. "She just didn't like the mirror." Months went by. I threw myself into work. My parents were thrilled, of course. "Best birthday gift we've ever given you," my mom joked. They still tease me about that night. My dad even framed a copy of the violation notice and hung it in his home office, labeled Exhibit A Boundaries. Then, about half a year after everything ended, I ran into Sophie downtown. She looked different, thinner, tired, wearing that forced brightness people use when they're narrating their downfall as self-growth. She smiled weakly. "Hey, hey, I got my own place," she said quickly. "By myself this time." "Good," I said. "I'm glad." She hesitated. "You really did mean it when you said you supported my journey, huh?" I smiled faintly. "Always did. I just didn't need to walk it with you." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "You know, you were never boring. You just made too much sense." "Funny," I said. "That's exactly what I wanted." And then she walked away. It's been over a year now. I still live in the same apartment. Peaceful, quiet, plant-filled. No drama. No contracts. No ultimatums disguised as self-expression. Just silence that doesn't demand explanation. Sometimes I think about that birthday night, the look on her face when I said, "I support your journey." She thought I was being sarcastic, but I wasn't, because I really do. I just also support my own peace, and unlike her, I don't need permission for it. Update 1. It's been about 6 months since Sophie and I ran into each other downtown. Things had been blissfully quiet until the internet decided to get involved. I woke up one morning to about a dozen texts from friends, all variations of, "Dude, is this about you?" Attached were screenshots from a Medium article titled, "When Love Turns Controlling. My experience with a narcissistic partner who weaponized the law." The author? Sophie S. Now, normally I'd roll my eyes and move on. But the opening paragraph made my coffee go cold. "I once dated a man who used his position as my landlord to control me, evict me for loving authentically, and humiliate me in front of his family. He had his parents, both lawyers, hand me paperwork at his birthday dinner. It went on for 5 pages, full of half-truths, emotional flourishes, and enough selective memory to qualify as fiction. She'd turned our relationship into a case study on covert emotional abuse. Apparently, I represented patriarchal rigidity and fear of feminine freedom. My favorite part? He even documented everything, like a prosecutor building a case against love itself. At first, I was irritated. Then, I laughed, because what she didn't realize was how public the rest of the record already was. See, property management in my city is pretty small. Every notice, every eviction, every legal filing, it's all logged in the public tenant registry, including her signed violation letter, including her acknowledgement of occupancy breach, including her signature. All searchable, all time-stamped, all public. So when she published that article and started sharing it around online, it wasn't long before the comments section turned. "Wait, didn't she violate her lease? This story doesn't match the public record. She literally signed a property use agreement. Why are you blaming him for enforcing terms you signed?" Within a few days, the post was locked for harassment and factual disputes, then quietly deleted. I didn't report it, didn't contact her, didn't threaten legal action. The truth didn't need my defense. But a week later, I got a call from an old acquaintance, Mark, one of the attorneys who'd occasionally worked with my mom. "You'll never guess who applied for a paralegal position at our firm," he said. I didn't have to guess. "We Googled her name," he continued. "The article's still cached. And, well, let's just say no one wants to hire someone who confuses lease enforcement with abuse." I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. Because this wasn't a story about justice anymore. It was about how people will twist anything, even contracts, into narratives that make them feel better about losing. A month later, she emailed me. Short, brittle. I deleted the article. "You win. Congratulations." I replied. "It was never a contest, Sophie. You wrote a story. I just lived the facts." She didn't respond. Since then, I've learned something strange about peace. It doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it just feels like silence where the noise used to be. And in that silence, you realize you didn't win. You just stopped participating in someone else's delusion. These days, when people ask me why I stayed so calm through all of it, I tell them the same thing my father once said during a mediation. If you have the truth, time is your lawyer. And time did exactly what it always does. It made everything obvious. A few weeks ago, I hosted another birthday dinner, smaller this time. Same restaurant, same parents, different energy. At one point, my dad raised his glass and said with a grin, "So, son, any major life announcements this year?" I laughed. "No polyamory declarations tonight, I promise." Everyone laughed. It felt good, not like revenge, but like closure. Final update: that it's been a little over 2 years since that birthday dinner, the one that started it all. The funny thing about time is, it doesn't erase anything. It just gives the noise enough distance to sound small. I don't think about Sophie much anymore. Not out of bitterness, just peace. Like an old file you've already archived, not because you hate it, but because it doesn't serve a purpose to keep it on your desktop. Then, last month, she emailed me. Out of the blue. Subject line: "Closure, for real this time." It wasn't dramatic. No apologies, no accusations. Just a few quiet paragraphs that surprised me in their tone. I've been in therapy for a while now. I've been thinking a lot about control, how I tried to make people prove love through compliance. I read the lease again. It hit me that it wasn't about property or rules. It was about respect, the one thing I kept demanding but never really offered. Then, after a pause in the text, "I wanted to thank you for not hating me when you had every reason to. I'm sorry for turning our story into a performance." I guess I wasn't ready to realize I wasn't the main character. I sat there for a long time, rereading that line. Because for the first time in 3 years, it didn't sound like manipulation. It sounded like honesty. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit. I wanted to make sure I wasn't just reacting to nostalgia or ego. A week later, I replied, "Thank you, Sophie. I don't hate you. I never did. You were searching for freedom, and I was searching for peace. We just had different definitions. I hope you found yours." That was it. No signature, no flourish. Just clarity. A few days later, she sent one last line. "I think I finally understand Clause 6b. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're proof you respect yourself." That made me smile. Not out of triumph, just relief. Because for once, she wasn't arguing. She was understanding. I didn't write back. There was nothing left to say. But that night, I took the framed copy of her lease violation, the one my dad had labeled Exhibit A, Boundaries, off my wall. I didn't throw it away. I just placed it in a drawer next to a few other relics from that time. Not trophies, just reminders. Reminders that love without boundaries is chaos disguised as romance. That empathy doesn't mean permission. And that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them lose you. Last weekend, I had another birthday dinner. Smaller, warmer, quieter. Same restaurant. New faces. Julia sat beside me, laughing too loud at one of my dad's dry jokes. It felt good. Uncomplicated. At the end of the night, my mom hugged me and whispered, "You know, you finally look like you're home." And she was right. Because peace doesn't come when the drama ends. It comes when you stop needing to relive it. Before bed that night, I opened my laptop and scrolled through old files one last time. Found the contract, the notice, the photos, the emails. Then, for the first time, I selected them all and hit delete. A small window popped up. "Are you sure you want to permanently remove these items?" I clicked yes, and it felt like signing the only real contract that ever mattered, one with myself.